want Republicans dead.
Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay?
The women with the least likelihood of getting pregnant are the ones most worried about having abortions.
On January 6th of 2021, you had tens of thousands of people peacefully protesting.
So, it's not a right-wing conspiracy theory. It's not QAnon. It's real.
Hi, folks. It's Rick Wilson, and welcome to the Enemies List. My guest today is the great S.E. Cupp. You have seen S.E. Cupp on every cable news platform in America, being one of the smartest observers of our current political moment that you could hope to find. She is a lot like me, somebody who came out of that bubble of the last bubble of mainstream conservatism before it got sort of eaten up by the crazy populism or whatever it is they call it these days. And I'm so happy to have Essie on the program today because she has had some really great takes on the current moment of Republican brain rot, brain worms, whatever you want to call it, of getting into a culture war with Taylor Swift. So Essie, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for joining me. And it's really great to have you today. So let's kick right off into this. Like, can you imagine the Republican Party, the sort of conservative movement that we came out of, declaring war on like Bruce Springsteen at the time or any other cultural icon like a Taylor Swift? It just boggles the mind.
Yeah, and it's not even the targeting, because listen, Republicans and conservatives, including our generation of conservatives, we picked on celebrities all the time,
Sure.
unless they were named John Voight or unless they liked us, right? Then celebrities were great. Here, Clint Eastwood, have a great primetime speaking slot at the RNC. So we picked on celebrities, but the weirdness now is we're involving them in these conspiracy theories that are like easily disproven and super lame and dumb. Because the voter base that has been conditioned by the current Republican Party, well, it not only falls for this, it demands this, right? It demands these kinds of conspiracies, like Taylor Swift is a psyop and she's being used by the United States government. I mean, it's so absurd, but listen.
I'm not going to make the ad, but I was writing an ad last night in my head, and it's like, Taylor Swift enters the George Soros Conference Center at the Deep State Volcano Lair.
Yes, exactly. It's so absurd. And like this idea that, now that she's with Travis Kelce and now that he's won this, he's going to the Super Bowl,
right?
Now she's primed and famous enough to sway an election, forgetting the fact she's been famous for years and already endorsed Joe Biden. She did it in 2020.
And that's the other thing. It's like these guys like, oh, well, she's just dating him because he's so wealthy as a football player. I'm like, Taylor Swift could buy the entire team. She could crap out his net worth in about half an hour. And it's just like, it's so, I mean, I'm not like doing the liberal thing about it. It's so misogynistic, but it is misogynistic as hell. Like she couldn't possibly be doing this for any other reason than to disrupt the health of the order of the conservative movement.
And that she's, I mean, that's certainly a layer of it too.
Sure.
And that she's being used, right? She's a puppet of the Biden administration. It'd be much more difficult to say that about a guy. So yeah, I mean, it's all the things, which is why they love it, because it ticks every box that's become really useful for this MAGA voting base.
I mean, the conspiracy stuff, as it has been percolating up more and more and more. And you and I both know Glenn Beck, who is one of the guys who I think kind of mainstreamed the conservative conspiracy movement a lot, starting in the post Tea Party moment. Like, you started hearing like Agenda 21 and all these other things. And now it's like, it's almost like Republicans and conservatives won't respond to anything unless it's like packaged with a conspiracy around it.
Yeah. It's funny that you bring up Glenn, because I was recently on a podcast earlier this week and I haven't thought about Glenn in a long time, but I worked for him. He was one of my first bosses.
Mm-hmm.
So was Tucker.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, and he said the same thing, like that he was the original kind of conspiracy theorist. And it's so true. And the way Glenn did it, with the chalkboards and he'd find some dusty book in the basement of like a library that no one had ever heard of. And he's like, look, it's all in here. It was, and all the talk of the caliphate. I mean, there was a lot of, remember that?
Oh,
but he bookended all of that with stuff that was news, like I was hired to do a show called Real News, and we talked about real news stories. And, so I think that sold it a little bit, but the idea that Glenn was a cult of personality was there from the beginning. And, we've watched him completely change his positions about Trump and about everything, kind of based on where his viewers are and where they want him to go. So I think Glenn is a performer kind of above all else.
Right.
But for that moment really tapped into an audience that was eager for all of the conspiracies and the wild thing, the wild premises, and here's all your evil enemies, and here are the people you need to be mad about, and here are the people you need to be skeptical of. I mean, he really stoked that.
Well, I think you had a really interesting point. To a great degree, when Ailes and Murdoch started Fox in 96, 97, they led the audience for a long time. They moved the audience with them for a long time. Limbaugh used to move the audience with him on talk radio for a long time.
That's right.
And at some point, and I think it's like 2014, 15, just before Trump, I started sensing it. I don't know when you did, that the audience was moving the coverage instead of the other way around. And that machine that had been built to feed from the Fox newsroom down to talk radio, down to blogs and social media, had inverted somewhere along the way. And then it became like the craziest stuff would get laundered up the pyramid, and they'd make excuses for the insanity rather than the other way around.
I think you're 100% correct. And the evidence is the advent and need for other outlets like Newsmax and OAN who would go with audiences where Fox stopped, when Lara Logan got unpalatable for Fox, she was picked up by Newsmax, and then she became unpalatable for Newsmax, and OAN picked her up, and now I think she's on the My Pillow Guys TV network. But the advent of all of these ancillary right-wing media outlets is because the audience demanded more and more and more crazy. And Fox went with the crazy for sure, but even Fox had a ceiling to the crazy. And the ceiling turned out to be when Lara Logan's talking about, the Ukrainians drinking the blood of children. Right. That was the ceiling. But you can look at a lot of the personalities and the celebrities that have come out of Trump land and this new MAGA conspiracy world, and think that person would never have gotten a job on Fox or anywhere 10, 15 years ago. But today there is an audience for them because the audience is demanding much, much more of that.
Right. Well, and to loop back to Ailes again, Roger came out of news. Roger understood what he was doing, but he wasn't just hiring lunatics for the first 10, 12 years. It evolved into that hiring, and now that he's been off the scene for a decade now almost. It seems like, the only reason they got rid of Tucker was he cost them $1 billion.
Yes.
And they had no control over him. They would take a lighter weight Tucker, which I think they kind of have with Gutfeld and Waters and all those other C-tier guys.
Yeah. But let me just bolster that last point, because in the beginning, Roger Ailes needed to make Fox News credible. And so he put a lot of mainstream news people in there. And then there was a time when I was there where there was an actual interest in intellectual conservatism. I mean, we had
I remember
Charles Krauthammer and Fred Barnes and, Bill Kristol and Stephen Hayes and Jonah, all these really intellectually rigorous
Sure.
conservatives who knew like who Hayek was and could
Right.
talk in orthodoxy. None of that matters now. And in fact, those people have either been pushed out or left because
Right.
I guess being intellectual is being like an establishment cuck. So now it's like complete. Right. It's rid of all the things. It's rid of the credible voices. It's rid of the journalism, and it's rid of the intellectual rigor that has always been sort of the foundation of modern conservatism. That's all.
Sure. I mean, all of us who came up in that sort of Burke, Kirk, Buckley, Hayek world, we knew we were an intellectual minority, so we had to fight really well and had to learn how to articulate things really well. And it's like this lowest common denominator thing that just keeps stacking up and stacking up and stacking up. And now there's no argument about, limited government. It's punish my enemies. It's go get the people I hate. It's put that guy in jail. And it really is. I always, somebody asked me one time, like, what do you think that we lost the most under Trumpism? I'm like, we lost principled conservatism. There's no
we lost conservatism.
There's no elected leader in the Trump universe, the Trump expanded universe, that believes in limited government. They believe in unlimited government. They believe in the power of the state by 1,000 times. It really is like, as a frustrated, ex-Republican and still conservative, it's just like that. The thing that really bothers me, because people like us and generations before us worked really hard to communicate to the American people about conservatism.
And against so many barriers, especially me coming up. I was a young woman.
Sure,
I was not taken seriously. I had to publish books before anyone would take me seriously. And that's fine. I got lots of degrees and I was happy to, to prove myself. But against all kinds of odds, I remember sitting at a table with Alan Combs before he died.
God bless him. Good, nice guy.
Oh, the nicest. However,
nice guy.
Oh, no, I loved him. However, I was sitting at a table at Fox with him. It was some panel that we were all on. And I think Obama or someone had come out with a book. And I was like, I'm not sure what business this person has writing a story of their life yet, considering they haven't actually done stuff yet.
Yep.
And Alan goes, have you written a book, Essie? And I forget who the host was. The host had to say, yeah, she's written 2, actually. But that was the stuff we were constantly up against. This sort of like, you're quacks, you're backwards. And questioning that intellectual rigor was something we were used to. Now there's no point in even bringing up intellectual arguments, because I go on TV to talk about the stupid green M&M or Dr. Seuss. I mean, it's like fucking bananas. Like, that's not what I got into this for, but that's where it's devolved. And it's really hard to make a case, because you're never asked to anymore.
No.
For intellectual, what is conservatism? Because Trump and Republicans jettisoned the conservatism to make Trump happy.
Every bit of it, economic responsibility. Let's remember, Trump spent like the proverbial drunken sailor as much as any Democrat we would have criticized in the past. And for that part of the conservative movement that was about personal responsibility and dignity and integrity, I mean, come on, if you were looking for the exact opposite of all that shit, it would be Donald Trump. I mean,
Not to mention family values, anti-protectionism. Right. I mean, there's so much shit that we used to stand on that, I mean, it doesn't matter to them anymore.
No. I mean, right now he's offering this idea of a 60% tax on all Chinese goods. I'm like, the most basic dumb fuck Republican or conservative economic student in a freshman year macro class would say, no, that's a tax on Americans.
That's a tax on us. Yeah.
Right. But now it's like, I'm taxing Chinese. It's kind of maddening, but it is, we are in this culture war. They can't stop it. I think DeSantis sort of probed the outer limit of the culture war, like where it starts to blow back on you.
Yeah.
Because even Republicans were like, yeah, no, he's too far out there. That's too much. This stuff.
Well, and it didn't work, right?
Right.
Like
there was no political utility to it.
No, that the ham-fisted swings at Disney and drag queen story out, like it just didn't you even had people like Kellyanne Conway saying that is not an economic platform. Like that's
Correct.
not a serious, that's not a campaign. And so I think not only did he test the outer limits, he failed at testing the outer limits, right? So
Right.
it really just didn't work.
I had a person who firsthand told me, he said, the pollsters went in to say to DeSantis, please God, do not pass the 6-week abortion ban, because if you make it to the general election, it will absolutely kill you, because 70% of Republican women don't like it. And the response was basically like, go fuck yourself. I'm doing this. I have to win the primary.
Right.
And that speaks to like how Republicans, I think, used to feel that they were part of the country that was being ignored. And now it's like they don't even want to bother. They want to create this like separate culture, separate silos, separate economics, separate politics that is not, dominating the whole country, but just like they want to secede from America de facto without doing all the horrible Civil War part.
Without or without the moving trucks. But like,
right.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, the project has been, in contrast to growing the tent, which we always wanted to do, it's condensing it. So I always liken it to those cans of orange juice that you get in the freezer, right?
Oh, right.
Super condensed,
frozen
syrupy,
condensed.
sweet. Yep. You're meant to add water to it, right? Well, they stopped adding water. And all they want is the most condensed, rabid form, most pure form of Trumpism that they can get. And they're not only willing to lose voters and good conservatives, they're kicking good conservatives out. People like Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, they're actively kicking people out of the party to condense and purify it. So winning is not the goal. Purity is the goal. So it's no surprise they haven't won in a long time, and they just keep losing. And your DeSantis example is perfect. I don't care about winning the general election, i.e. the whole ball game.
Right.
I just want to win this one
the
battle.
important part.
Right. I just want to win this one battle, and I have to be the purest, most condensed form of myself to do it. It's just so myopic, and why it's going to, I think, be a long time before Republicans can win nationally again.
Yeah. Something just popped back up in my head. You were talking about the celebrities right in the beginning of the conversation. And there was a clip last night, and Phineas will insert the clip here. But it's Jack Posobiec saying, "Oh, we don't need celebrities. We have Kid Rock. We have John Voight. We have Ted Nugent. I mean, come on." It just struck me as like, man, y'all just hit bottom right there and stared digging.
Wait, you're not going to go to the John Voight Eras Tour concert?
God almighty. But I mean, it really is. It's like, that's part of the separate culture thing. And it's like the child trafficking movie last year, which they turned into this like cultural test. Either you loved it and saw it 15 times, or you were with the predators, It's such a fragile way to try to build a party. And it all depends on the one celebrity that does tower over most all of the rest, and that's Trump himself. Yeah. I mean, his celebrity, and you look, you spent a lot of time on cable. I've spent a lot of time on cable. We talk. But Trump's role as this centerpiece of news coverage, he's said relatively few words, but we can't turn away from the monstrosity. We can't seem to get away from the horror of this guy. Mm-hmm. How do you think, you start to diminish that kind of celebrity? How do you turn him into, the disgraced movie star, the disgraced actor, the disgraced celebrity figure, other than just letting him talk?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think to a majority of the country, he's already all of those things. And I know it can feel like the country is equally divided on this. They're not. I mean, you have lots of Republicans, 40% in Iowa who chose someone else, for example, 40% in New Hampshire who chose someone else. So I think that his reputation is pretty clear to most people, but to the cult, I mean, you're never going to. I watch a lot of cult documentaries. It's like my favorite genre of doc.
I love that.
And yeah, lots. I just watched Love Has Won. Listen, they're all the same in that these aren't evidence-based projects, right? When the doomsday prediction comes and goes and the world doesn't end, it doesn't mean that the cult leaders suddenly decide, well, that didn't pan out, I'm heading out of here and going back to my real life. No, they still stick with it because it's a cult, and the cult leader is the only thing that matters. So in that way, you know, not every Republican voter is part of this cult, but MAGA operates much more like a cult than a political movement. It's not.
Oh, for
it's
sure.
not centered on ideology. It's not even centered on you know, running a party, governing a party, getting people elected. That's not even the project. It's really just stoking this cult of personality, and you know, it's really hard to cut through that. I actually talked to a lot of cult deprogrammers, people who have successfully gotten people out of cults, and they'll say, like, telling these people that they're crazy or trying to show them evidence that what they believe in is just not true, this does not work, because then you become part of the enemy,
right?
And you're proof that they are a targeted, martyred community. So it's a really tough thing to shake that loose, and I don't think that'll happen anytime soon.
I try not to overinterpret things, but the fact that he kicked off his campaign in Waco gave me all the creepy vibes. You know, Donald Koresh here gave me all the creepy vibes of like, he actually knows more about how to do this than we thought.
Was Jonestown booked? Was it unavailable? Who knows?
Right?
Maybe they had a competing event that day.
Were you going to give everybody a tracksuit and promise that they'd have a place on the Comet? I mean,
what were they wearing? Nikes? Or yeah, they were wearing some sneakers.
Yeah. I want to see Donald do like a Marshall Applewhite video, like, wearing the jumpsuit. Oh my God.
I know. I mean, listen, it's silly and absurd to us, and we make fun of it. Rightly. We should. It's absurd. But to these people, it's real serious. They believe it. They really, you know, they believe JFK Jr. is coming back from the dead. He's going to run with Donald Trump. And the fact that he hasn't appeared at any of the dates that he was supposed to appear does not deter them. Taylor Swift is a psyop. I mean, they will go home and say this and believe it. And sometimes this ends in real violence. You know, the attack on Paul Pelosi was based on conspiracy theories that ended in real violence. It's also, you know, separated people from their money, because Trump has asked for money to stop the steal. It goes to line his own pockets. It cuts people off from their families, their friends. They lose their jobs. Hundreds of them have gone to jail for Donald Trump. So, I mean, it's funny, except that it's really, really dangerous and deleterious to these people, to Trump's own fans.
The tragicomic aspect of it, it really is there. I mean, there's a part of this where you look at these poor people who really thought they were coming to Washington to save America, and the speed with which they've been thrown under the bus, it doesn't even seem to sink in. You've got some of these guys that are like coming into the courtroom and saying, "Yeah, okay, sentence me to 4 years. I would do it again."
Yes.
Oh, cool, good, smart play. But you know that devotion is like I had Stephen Hassan one time on the show, and he's so smart about cults. He's so smart about cult stuff, and he's like, they score their lives on their devotion. They think about the value of their life becomes their devotion to the leader, and
that's a cult.
It's a cult. There's no other word for it. There's no other word or excuse or phrase or anything. I mean, and you're right. They're gonna come up by the end of this week. They're gonna say that Taylor Swift is a reptilian pedophile,
Satanist,
Satanist, celebrity abortionist built in a lab by George Soros and the gray aliens or whatever the hell. And it's just like, and that's the other part of it. It's like that old Hunter Thompson phrase. Once you get into a serious drug habit, the temptation is to push it all the way. So they'll make it worse and worse and worse and worse. And no one is there in that side of the movement now to check them. No one's there to save people from disinformation, misinformation, outright lies, weird agit porn bullshit. And again, it goes back to what we're talking about earlier. in the conservative movement, we did have guardrails. We had discipline. We had people who would go, hey, that guy's too much.
Yeah.
No, he shouldn't be in office.
Yes.
And it functioned because, that was part of the rules-based conservative movement. And now it's just like anarchy.
Well, and we had something called, I don't know if you're familiar with this term, but it's something that was called shame.
Oh, yes.
We had shame, right? But I don't think people know what this is anymore in today's modern Republican Party. But like Todd Aiken was swiftly dealt with, right? Richard Murdoch swiftly dealt with. We didn't want to be embarrassed by the fringes of our party. And in fact, in the 2012 autopsy that I worked on, like part of that was part of the project was to get rid of the fringiest parts. And now the Gosars and the Steve Kings and the Marjorie Taylor Greens are not just given a seat at the table, they're elevated.
Right.
And there's no embarrassment around them anymore.
None at all. And a guy like Matt Gaetz, who is a pure performative con man,
grifter,
politically speaking, grifter, pure flim flam artist politically.
Yep.
That guy knows exactly what he's doing. He winks at the camera when he's doing it, and they still don't get it. They still don't pick up on it. And there's a point where, and I know where it was with me. It was in early 2017. I was talking to all my former clients, all these guys on the Hill, in the Senate, in the House, all over the place. And they were like, well, we're going to play along. Paul's going to keep him under control. Mitch will keep him under control. And those same people would go on Fox at night and say, I will burn the house down to save Donald Trump, to save a hair on Donald Trump's head. I will kill my family, oh great overlord. And it just kept that number of people that I knew or had elected, or people like, Stuart and I were going through a list one day and we're like, holy shit, we knew a third of the people in office, either as friends or clients or some relationship to them. And they're all gone now. There's nobody left. The lunatics are fully in charge of the asylum. There is no Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzer, David Jolly, Carlos Cabela, nobody like that. It's gone.
And the people, this is entirely the fault of people who should know better. The Matt Gaetzes, the people who do know better.
Right.
The supposed intellectuals of the Republican Party, the Elise Stefanik's, Harvard educated, Halling, Mike Lee, Vivek. These are smart people who know what they're doing. And in another parallel universe would be the ones telling the Gosars and the Marjorie Taylor Greens, you don't know what you're talking about. You are an embarrassment to us and we don't want anything to do with you. Instead, they are amplifying those voices. The smart people are amplifying the idiots. And that's what's giving them all the credibility and freedom that they need to run.
You look at a guy like a Josh Hawley, highly educated, elite in every conceivable dimension, a pure product of the meritocracy. And yet he's engaged in the most, and again, he knows better. He's not really that person. He's winking and nodding. Look, the Mike Lee I knew in 2012 and 2014, if I had described a hypothetical candidate like Donald Trump to Mike Lee back then, he would have been outraged and whipped out his Constitution from his pocket and had 57 reasons why that person would be wrong for the job. And now he's like, Mr. Trump, can I wash your car today? It's crazy.
Yes. Probably the most, like if Mike Pence was the biggest deficit hawk I knew, Mike Lee was the biggest constitutionalist I knew. And,
100%.
It was all he talked about. And from a very deep-seated, learned place. And
100%.
now he's supporting a guy who has said he wants to suspend the Constitution. And it's bananas, but that's how successful the cultification of the GOP has been. Even the Mike Pences suddenly don't care about the debts and the deficit. Even the Mike Lees don't care that much about the Constitution. That's how far it's gone.
Well, you know what? We're going to have a big old election this year, and it's going to be one more chance for America to reset the clock again, and we'll see where the conservative movement goes from there. Well, SE Cupp, anything you want us to know about that you're working on? I know you just read a terrific piece about Taylor Swift and the culture and the brain melting culture war.
I did. Yeah, you can find my my work at the New York Daily News. It's also nationally syndicated, so maybe in your hometown paper. And you can see me a lot on CNN. And I'm on Twitter at SE Cupp and Instagram at SE Cupp.
There you go. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, SE. I really appreciate it. Great conversation. We will have you back again soon.
Awesome. Great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Well, folks, here we go. This is an amorphous group on the enemies list today, but you know who you are. These are the people that peddle insane conspiracy theories. These are the people that push out the most lurid QAnon garbage. These are the people that push out the things that say that America is run by lizard aliens, Soros, Antifa, child predator overlords. And eventually it has consequences, as it did this week. In Pennsylvania, a 32-year-old man named Justin Moan got on YouTube, started streaming. And by the way, YouTube was where he was radicalized in large measure, with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands of conspiracy theory videos. Now, he didn't just go on and start this YouTube live stream to rant about the government or about his love of Donald Trump or right-wing conspiracy theories, of which he was fully vested. He went on that live stream to show everyone in the world his father's decapitated head, whom he had killed a little while before. Why did he kill his father? Because he thought that his father was a part of the deep state. Thought that his father was in some way a part of a global conspiracy that was trying to stop the patriots from taking power in America. This stuff doesn't come from nowhere. It's not random. It's not stochastic. He's not the only one. The Tree of Life synagogue shooter, same thing. Radicalized online to believe that Jews were trying to replace white people in America. And you could go on and on and on about this pipeline, this conveyor belt of radicalization. And it is in part the fault of the social networks, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Reddit. They've all got their elements that are radicalizing these people. And they're meant to radicalize people who already have existing mental deficiencies, mental illnesses, and psychological problems. And they work really well. But the content that comes from places like Alex Jones and all these other conspiracy folks that have weaponized and monetized trying to convince Americans they live in a separate, evil, alternate reality, they're the ones responsible for these kind of things at the end. The people that are pushing these conspiracy theories, some of them are foreign actors. Some are American for-profit corporations like the Alex Jones enterprise. But they are shaping the minds and realities of millions of people. And sometimes those realities snap over into the real world, and they do something like decapitate their own father because of shit they saw online. And the people that create that and empower that and profit from it, you are always going to be on the enemies list.